Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I am Bearded Dev, and today we are going to be looking at group by, having, and some aggregate functions in SQL. Sum, count, max, min and average. Let's jump over to SQL Server Management Studio and I'm going to be going through some examples. Okay, so we're on SQL Server Management Studio. I'm just going to open up a query against my faithful database, the bookshop. We're going to be looking at the orders table today, so I'm just going to run a query, select all from orders just to show you the data we've got in there. We have got minimal data at the moment. So when we have a table like this that stores total, it stores our customer ID, the date and the total amount. We also have an order details table that breaks that order down even further. Let's imagine a scenario where we want to know totals per customer. So we might want to know the maximum order a customer has placed with us. We might want to know the minimum order a customer places. We might want to know the average order each customer places. And we're going to be going through some examples of that today. Now, I can just return some totals from this table. So if I just wanted to know the sum of all orders in this table, we can use our aggregate function sum. We're going to use our order total column. So it's just sum column name from our table orders. And if we run that query now, I'll just change this to alias the column, and we'll change this to be aliased as result. I'm just going to run this query now, and we've got a total of 176. So that's the total of everything within our orders table. But our orders table is also broke down per customer, so we may want to figure out the total per customer as well. So let's look at how we do that. So we're going to write exactly the same query out again as a result from our orders table, but this time we want to know the total per customer rather than all the results gathered together. And how we do that is we're going to use the group by clause, and group by allows us to divide the data in our table into different groups. In this case, we're going to be looking at the customers, so we want to group by the customer ID. And in my select statement, I'll also add the customer ID in there to show you. So what we're doing is we're looking at the orders table, we're going to group by our customer ID, and we're going to return the customer ID and the total, and that total is going to be per customer because that is what our group by is set as. So let's highlight this query now and execute it, and as we can see, we've got three results. We've got three customers who have placed orders at the moment, very minimal data. We can see customer 1, his total is 100, nice even number. Customer 2, £61, and customer 3, £15. Let's comment out this second query and let's run select all. So as we can see here, we've got 35, 45 and 20 for customer 1. Add those up together quickly, we get 100. Customer 3, pretty easy, he's only placed one order of £15. Customer 2, he's placed two orders, one of 23, 38. So we've got our totals there of 61 for customer 2. That's an introduction just how to use the group by clause. I'll just go through and the aggregate function of sum as well. Let's imagine we want to know the amount of orders each customer has placed. So we're going to return customer ID, and this time we're going to use our count aggregate function, and we're going to count OID. So just to get the individual IDs that each customer has placed. Again, we're going to the orders table, and again we're going to be grouping by our customer ID. So let's highlight that query and execute it. As we can see, we know customer 1 has placed 3 orders, customer 2 has placed 2, and customer 3 has placed 1. So when thinking about the group by clause, what I like to think is we've got our table here, We've got various customer IDs in here. You might be working with other data to go through your examples. But just imagine dividing this table into mini tables per customer. Now we never actually see that. We're just working with that data. That's just a visualization for ourselves to understand what that group by clause is actually doing. So this is a little bit different to anything we've done before. Normally we work with the data in the table as a whole. That's considered one set. But now we're effectively dividing that into subsets and working with data from it. I'm just going to show you an example of what we do if I was to select all from orders and then group by our customer ID. So we're looking at the orders table, we're selecting all the columns and we want to group by the customer ID. Let's execute this query and see what happens. As we can see, we've got an error message here. That query has actually failed. The failure message we've got, column orders.order ID is invalid in the select list because it is not contained in either an aggregate function or the group by clause. So when we've took that table and divided it into a subset of data per customer, we've still got multiple rows per customer. So SQL doesn't know which of those rows to return. When we're using grouping, we're only returning one row per customer if we are only grouping by customer ID. We could group by all columns, in which case all data would be returned, but there's no point in doing that. And we can also group by multiple columns as well. We don't have to group by the customer ID. There is any column we can use to group by. In this case we could group by the order date. As you can see, all our order dates are at different dates and times though, so I would expect the same amount of results to be returned. And we'll do order date and let's say sum of our total column as well. So if I run this query now, we're just going to see the dates and the sum of the order total on that date. If we had orders on multiple dates, then we would receive, we would aggregate that data, so SQL would sum that data for the total against the order date for us. In this case it's easier because we've got multiple rows per customer to show you that as an example. So sum will take all the data and sum that together. That's just a mathematical function. Count will count the individual rows. We're going to move on to a few other aggregate functions that we've got, min, max and average as well. So average is quite a good one. We want to know the average spend per customer that comes into our store. So we're going to select customer ID, we're going to say AVG. So it's not actually the word average, it's just the letters AVG, which we recognise as average. We're going to say total as result from orders. Now again, I don't have to use a group by here, but if I was to execute the query, because I'm returning the customer ID, that wouldn't actually work. So if I just selected the average, then we'd get our result there. So £29.33 recurring is our average. If I want to return that per customer ID, again we wasn't grouping by customer ID there, that's why I couldn't return the customer ID. So this average amount has multiple customer IDs to choose from, so it wouldn't know which one to choose, which is why we get that error. So if I add in our customer ID and then we'll tell this query we want to group this data by our customer ID in this orders table, and if we run that now we get the average spend per customer. Let's just cast that result as a decimal, just to 2 decimal places, so we have relevant data. We don't want to know to, what have we got here, 6 decimal places. So let's run that query and we've reduced that decimal to 2 decimal places now, and we can see the average order total per customer. So for customer number 1 that's £33.33, Customer number 3, as expected, we only have one order, so that's £15. And we could also use multiple aggregate functions in this query. So as well as our average, we can also return the sum. So we'll return the sum of the total, and we can also return the count. We'll just base that on order ID column. So if we run that query now, I've again forgot to alias the columns, quite a common occurrence as you can see in my demonstrations. So we call this sum underscore result, and we'll call this one count underscore result. So just give those columns a name. So if I execute that query now, as we can see, per customer, I've got the average, and I've got the sum, the total amount, and I've got the count of orders. So customer 1, his average order total is £33.33. The total amount he spent is £100, and he's done that within 3 orders. Let's have a look at two other aggregate functions, which are min and max. So we want to use our orders table, and we want to know the minimum order total. So the lowest amount somebody has spent. So the query for that is just min, open brackets or parentheses, the column name from our orders table. So I'll just highlight that query and execute it. That's min amount, and then we can see £15 is our minimum order amount. I'll just comment out these queries here and return the full result set as well, just to double check. In order total, yeah, our lowest amount is £15, and we could reverse that. So instead of using min, we can use max. Again, we'll go on order total, and that will give us the maximum amount spent, which is £45. We'll just double check that. Yeah, in our results is £45. As you can see, guys, with my data, it's only quite small. You could be working with hundreds of thousands or even millions of rows in this table. So we've gone through the group by clause and our aggregate functions there. So max will return the highest value. That doesn't have to be an integer or a decimal or a numeric data type. If you was to set that as date, it would choose the highest date. If you was to set that as text alphabetically, it would choose in that order, the highest ordered alphabetically. Min would do completely the opposite, so the lowest amount. Sum would give us a total. So when working with sum, we do have to be using numeric types. It's not going to know how to add text together, and it's not going to know how to add dates together either. Count is just a count of the rows that are broken down for the group by clause. Sometimes we just want to check how many how many rows we've got in a table. So we could just say count order ID from our orders table. Tell us how many rows we've got. 6. So again, you don't have to use the group by if you're going to be operating on the entire table. If you want to divide that table into subsets, then you need to use the group by clause. And we've also looked at average as well. So we want to calculate the average amount a customer spends. We might be looking at a database. We want to calculate the average pay an employee gets. It's a really useful built-in aggregate function. What I'd recommend, guys, find a table with some numeric data in that is broken down by something you can use as a group by clause, and have a play with this, because it can become very useful when you move on to further higher level development. And I'm just going to build onto this count. So I'm just going to open up a new query window, and we're going to select all columns from our customers table. I'm just going to show you the data in here. I'm just going to show you, point your attention to this middle name column here. As we can see, we've got 3 nulls in here, and then 2 customers who have got a middle name that is known to us. So just against that column we're going to write account middle name from our customers table, and then we're also going to use count all from our customers table, and we're going to run these two against each other. So count all will just count all of the rows in the table regardless of what's in there. So I'm going to run this now and we'll go through what's happened with these results. I'll just alias these, so as count and then as count. Oh, let's run these two queries side by side. We can't use the asterisk to do that, so we'll just put the letter T there. Okay, so we're working with the same table here, the customers table, and our first one where we've looked at the middle name column has only returned the count of 2, and then our second one where we've said count all, it just counts the amount of rows in that table as returned 5. And if we run our select all from the customers table, let's see which one's correct, 5 or 2. Well, we've got 5 rows in that table. And the reason is because when you use count that is focused on a column, nulls are not taken into consideration. So if you are looking at a count on a nullable column, it will only return the columns to the count that have got valid data in there. So it will disregard nulls. So as we can see here, we've only got 2 customers that have got middle names Sharon and Sam, and then the rest, the other rows are null. So it's saying there's three rows that are null. We don't throw those away, we don't want them in our count, and we've got 2 that are valid, so we're going to return the number 2. I'm just going to go back over to our first query window, and we're going to be having a look at something else, which is the having clause. So I'm going to just delete these queries and put these queries back in that we commented out earlier. And let's have a look at this one. So we've run this, and I'll tell you what we'll do as well. We'll add the min order total as min result, and we'll add the max order total. Remember, with this query we are using the group by clause to group by customer, so it's going to return the minimum total amount per customer and the maximum total amount per customer. We're not looking at the table as a whole, we've grouped it into a subset of results. So if I execute that now, we've got all our 5 aggregate functions that we're looking at today. We've gone over how to use the group by clause. But let's imagine I want to drill down into this data a bit further. So I only want to return customers where their average total amount is greater than £30. Now, from what we've gone through previously, our where clause is used to filter rows according to predicates, but that's not the same with the group by clause. So the where clause only operates on the table as a whole, on that set of results. When we divide that into subsets using the group by, we have to use the having clause. So I'm going to just go on to the next line, and we're going to say having, and in this case we want to look for the average total amount greater than 30. So again we have to use our aggregate function here. So we're going to say avg order total is greater than 30. So that is now going to operate on each subset of data. So we've got 3 groups, one group for customer 1, one group for customer 2, and one group for customer 3. So each of those groups now needs to have an average order total greater than 30 to meet our requirements. Now notice I've had to use the aggregate function in the having clause rather than the alias that I've chosen in the select, and that's to do with logical query processing, the order in which SQL processes. So remember, that's from, where, group by, having, select, order by. So because having is going to be evaluated before select, the database engine doesn't know that that column's been renamed at this stage. So let's have a look at our result before we run this query. We're expecting to see customers 1 and customer 2 returned because their average result, their average order total, is greater than £30. Let's run that query, and as we can see, we have got the correct result we were expecting. Let's change having to where, and let's see what happens. We've got squiggly lines underneath to indicate that that's not a valid syntax. We run that and we're going to get an incorrect syntax error. And that's because where would go before group by in our query, because that operates on the table as a whole, whereas having is within each group. So we'll run that query again, and we've got the correct results there. If I change that order total to 31, we would expect to see customer 2 disappear and only customer 1 returned, and that's the correct results we've had returned there. So as you can see, this is very useful to us in SQL. Imagine scenarios where we want to generate monthly reports. We want to know the total of the money we've made this month. We want to know the average amount each customer spent each month. We might want to analyse that data to see how we can improve that. We want to know which customers are our best customers, so which customer spends the most, which customer averages the most, and which customer spends the least amount, and when they come in, how can we get them to spend more. So this is really useful in analysing data in SQL. I am also going to be doing a separate video on the differences between where and having. I hope you've really enjoyed the video today, guys. We've looked at group by, having and aggregate functions. They are really fun to have a play around within SQL. I can guarantee you, if you do continue to use SQL, you will be coming across them in the future, especially if you're going to be looking at reports or returning totals on any areas of the system. If you do like the video, please do hit the thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe. I will be uploading videos regularly to this channel, and if you'd like to email me anything, my email address is askbeardeddev@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.